everyone. My name is Dawn Brolin. I'm a certified public accountant, a certified fraud examiner, the president of Powerful Accounting Inc., and the author of The Designated Motivator for Accounting Professionals. And I'm here today just to talk to you briefly about an awesome inventory app called Fishbowl. What I love about Fishbowl is its ability to sync seamlessly with QuickBooks Enterprise. And what's even better about it is we as accounting professionals don't always have to be the best at everything. I find that, if you think about softball, which is what I always like to talk about, not everybody's a great pitcher. Not everybody's a great outfielder. And so as accounting professionals, we all find those areas of accounting that we are really good at and that we are really passionate at and we love. I love my clients, but I don't want to have to implement an inventory system for my clients. It's not in my what I call wheelhouse, okay? But what's great about Fishbowl is they have someone on their team named Beverly Lang, and Beverly is an accounting professional. And so she's able to make sure that the inventory system is set up properly and that most importantly, the accounting is done and the integration from Fishbowl inventory into the QuickBooks Enterprise system is seamless and accurate. So myself as the accounting professional, I want to make sure I'm referring the best of breed solutions for my clients, especially when I don't have my hands in on that. And so I trust Beverly and I trust Fishbowl that they're going to do the job right. I've seen it firsthand. If you want good inventory, great inventory, easy implementation, and have someone who knows the accounting side of it, Fishbowl's your solution. Thanks for listening. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to the DM Disruption. I'm here today with one of my favorite people, Tyler Hickman, who is the lead of the accountant channel at Veem. And Tyler and I have been working together for quite a while. He's more than just a team lead in the accounting channel. In my opinion, he's the magician at Veem who makes everything work. So, Tyler, hello. Say hello to everybody. Let us know who you are, what you're all about, and then we're going to get into some fun Q&A and some answers about what Veem is doing for certainly all of my clients and many other small business owners across the country and the world.
Yes,
actually.
yes. Well. Thank you. First off, thank you, Dawn, for having me on. It's been great being a part of the starting lineup and being on the team here. So, like you said, my name is Tyler Hickman. I'm the team lead from Veem Accounting Services here, and really what I do on a day-to-day basis and what we do is we're really focused on working with small, medium-sized organizations here in the U.S. but as well as internationally to help them with their AP and AR processes. Of course, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but at the end of the day, we're just trying to save time and money and give a little bit of a better tech experience to businesses at the end of the day.
Yeah, and so I discovered Veem back in, I think it was at Scaling New Heights last fall, where I started to learn more about what you do. And of course, there's a lot of options when it comes to AR and AP. I've been searching for, I guess I would call it like a home base, a place where I felt comfortable all around between the payments, the timing of the payments, of course, are super important. Any fees associated with payments, everybody wants to, try to save as much as we can in that fee area, right? And I found that it was so easy for me to implement, which for me, it's like I just needed to be implemented and start to work immediately. And I was kind of tired of paying wire transfer fees, which is what I was doing. I don't have checks anywhere. I just don't have checks. So when someone says, oh, I need to make a payment, it's like, okay, well, where are you living? Customer or client or vendor, where are you living when it comes to that? Oh, well, just send me a check. Well, I don't have checks, so I don't do that. So I guess what I'll do is I'll add you to my Veem account, send you an email. You get to choose how you're going to interact with me when it comes to that. I just want to go to one place, make the payment. You want to get it by check, you want to get it by, ACH, you want it on a card, whatever you want it to do. Well, that's on you. I don't want to deal with that when it comes to paying someone else. So we found it just so easy to work with. And of course, the sync with QuickBooks, you got to be able to sync with QuickBooks, people. That's just at the end of the day, the AP and AR and QuickBooks better match what's in Veem. And then we have that implementation of permissions and, user permissions and who can approve a bill and who can actually enter a bill, things like that, which I think are really awesome. So what have you seen in the industry, let's just even say over the last year, with regards to people's concerns about payments and how payments are being processed?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you brought up a lot in there, and really, and I can even take it back a little bit further. The industry has changed so much in the last 24 months, right? We're middle of March. you flip back 2 years ago to when COVID was starting, and that was really when we start to see the big change. There's a lot of businesses that really at that point started to adopt cloud softwares and technologies because their businesses needed to do a change and adapt. So they were not in brick and mortar stores or other office buildings where they've got the pile of checks and they can
Right.
walk over and get signatures done. All that. So there was a huge amount of adoption that needed to take on like that. It just needed to happen overnight. And it was a great spot for Veem as well as a lot of the accountants and bookkeepers that we work with, because there was a sudden kind of just rush of people looking to implement solutions. And I feel for people because there's a lot out there. There really is. Like there is, we operate in the fintech space. For some of you might know it. There's a new fintech company popping up in the U.S. every day, and it can really. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of buzzwords here of integrations and automations, and there's a ton of different things going on out there. And that's why a lot of SMBs in particular rely on accountants such as yourself, Don, but I mean thousands of others across North America, the U.S., and bookkeepers to be that source of truth. A lot of the concerns, like you mentioned, security is one of the big ones. How do I do this in a better way? Costs are huge. But when we talk about costs in particular, we try to focus on some of the maybe soft costs that people aren't always thinking about, right? Like everyone wants to focus on the hard cost. My bank cost me this. A check is cheap because it only costs me a cent. Well, that's not true. We know in reality, right? SAP's done a huge study on this. It costs an organization almost like $18 to send a check. When you actually factor in a lot of the soft costs that people aren't thinking about,
Yeah.
outside of the envelope and the stamp and all that kind of stuff, a check is a very expensive, method to send a payment. It's not cheap because there's a lot of manual work that quite often needs to go into it. So what people are really looking for, and it's like I said, especially in the SMB market, they want something that, as you mentioned, can be implemented day one, work very easy, and really help them from a processing perspective. We want to take the payment process, which was usually disconnected from the accounting process, right? Banks, some of them have direct bank feeds. There is some reconciliation there with someone like a QuickBooks Online, but it's typically not great.
Right.
And potentially, you might actually need to subscribe to a higher package business plan with your bank to get access to some of those bank feed integrations. So, is it worth the trade off? Probably not most times
Right.
there. So, we really want to connect things together. We want to connect that payments process in with your accounting process through like that QBO integration, which
Right.
is very simple in its operation, but it can really add value. And be able to implement that in a way where we're not having to capture everyone's ACH details. You can send a payment out. Don, I could send you a payment like you mentioned right now with just knowing your email address, and
Right.
then you own your information.
Right.
And that's been always a concern in particular small businesses. They don't want to own all of this information. What do I do with it? Is those questions we hear all the time. Like, how do I capture it? How am I storing it safely? Because you're responsible for storing this safely, right? You can't
Right.
just capture it and it can't just end up in a file somewhere. And I know it happens, right? But
Absolutely.
we're responsible as a business to this information. And using a tool like Veem allows that separation of that information where we're not sharing ACH details over the internet. Account fraud is up something like 300% with the FBI last year. Takeovers are very popular. So if we can remove that transfer of just really sensitive information over things like email and other instant messaging, and have that encrypted in platforms, it's really a huge benefit.
And I can even just snowball off of that whole entire comment, because if you think about the sensitive information, exactly what you were saying, think about what a check looks like. So close your eyes, right? Just think about what a check looks like. In the upper left corner, it's your business. Let's say we're sticking with business, your business name and address. Then you go down to the bottom, you can see the routing and account number. Now, if you've ever been a business owner who has manually entered someone's credit card information or ACH information, that's exactly the information you need in order to process an ACH yourself. So a manual add, if you will. When you mail a check, and we know that there's mail fraud. Mail fraud's illegal. Doesn't mean people don't do it. Just because it's illegal, we know there's so many things that are illegal. You're not supposed to speed on the road. How many of you have sped ever before in your whole entire life? There's not one person who has not actually gone over the speed limit, It's not possible, in my opinion, which I think my opinion is correct, of course. But if you think about it, the laws are there to minimize and prevent something bad from happening. It's a way of minimizing the risk of a potential crime or a fraud, if we're talking about fraud. And because a check publishes everything a fraudster needs in order to steal information, we know we have a problem. Think about this, very simple. I still see businesses who have a mailbox at the end of the road. They got their office. They have a mailbox maybe on the wall. It's not all lock and key mailbox. People know when the mail is delivered. If they're a fraudster, they've done their work. They've done their studies. They know when the mail is delivered. They know typically when people pick up the mail. They know when they can intercept an envelope of any kind. You can kind of tell when you get an envelope whether it's a bill or a payment or whatever, because they differentiate them for a reason. So you don't throw it out as junk email or junk mail, right? But the information that's on the front of that check is extremely risky. And so for those that are still mailing checks, I can tell you, I know major corporations who are traded on the stock market who have mailed me a check. And I'm just like, whoa, like, why are you still mailing me a check? I've given you every method to pay me securely through Veem. Why are you mailing me a check? And it's because they just haven't, that's not important enough. Do you know when it becomes important, Tyler? It becomes important when they are compromised.
Yes.
When a check has been stolen or some kind of payment or whatever the case may be, it's important when there's an emergency. And that's most cases for life, unfortunately.
Yes.
Although I don't believe, Tyler, there's an accounting emergency, but boy, I got some clients who think there are. We
Yes.
have to help them with
All
that.
the time. Friday afternoons, especially.
Yeah, exactly. Friday afternoons, there was always an emergency for some reason. But so those are the things, Tyler, that making a conscious and purposeful change. I know for me as a business owner, I wasn't accepting checks. Now, we do have probably 20 clients who pay us in a check. It's only during tax season. They come in, they get their return, they pay with a check. I don't have a problem with that, but I still tell them, you got to just think about the security of what you're doing. You're handing the check to me, which is great, but do you know what my destruction policy is? I know what it should be, but am I properly, number one, locking up those checks in the safe for 30 days? Are we or are we not? You don't know that when you walk out.
Yeah.
So obviously, accountants were trusted advisors, but what kind of horror stories, Tyler, have you encountered, or things that you're like, this is the reason why people need to make that conscious switch over to a secure system?
Yeah, like you said, we've been picking on checks here, and it's one of those, again, ones where it's been around since the Roman Empire, right? Like, it's a simple platform and everyone's got it. There's probably too many accountants to count out there that have signed blank checks sitting in their desk or their safe somewhere, and that's really, in particular, that's the stuff we really have to weed out. And I know, you always talk about it, accountants talking that, their head drops and they admit, yeah, I do have a couple. But, I think there's, from an industry standpoint, we're getting away from that. But, the horror stories, honestly, actually on my side are a lot of times, that their bank account takeovers. It happens all the time. And others, the typical situation, and I've heard this, worked for Veem for 2.5 years, probably half a dozen times or more, where an email comes through from one of your vendors saying, hey, we're switching our banking details. Here's the new credentials to our HSBC account or whatever. And of course, the vendor trusted came from that email. They go in, change the wire template details in their bank. There's no additional level of verification. Of course, the bank doesn't really care. You enter the details, send the payment off, and then of course a month later you get a call, or you might get a note or email saying, hey, our email was hacked, or whatever the situation might be, or hey, we didn't receive that payment. And of course they've just went through and changed. So that's the situation we come up against all the time. And that's why, in particular, even modern day solutions like even email, as an example, are not great. Right? There's no additional levels of security. There's no verifications in those process. There's no background checks. And this is honestly where banks fall short as well. ACH isn't perfect. Wires are not perfect. There's no additional layers that the bank does to verify that, hey, I'm sending these funds or this deposit to this vendor or customer that you guys might have. Um, is this right? Are these details going to the right way? And there's a lot of new tools. Veem is among one of them that has a whole list of background checks. Just as an example from a top view level, we verify all parties. So we actually represent not only the sender, but as well the receiver on all of our transactions. And that's really key from just a very base fundamental that we're able to verify that the details that not only were provided to you, are correct, but they match the party that they're going towards to make sure that it's a secure transaction end to end.
Right. And I think that that's like, so we talk about differentiators and ways that people are, when they're making their decision on a payment solution, whether it's a payable or a receivable, right? Because some systems only handle receivables, some handle only payables, and then you have those that are combos. I think that that's critical when we're looking at the security and understanding that, you have those telephone people who call the elderly typically, and they're like, hey, I've got 10 grand for you, but we got to verify your bank account. So if you give me that, you're going to see a debit and a credit, and then we're going to go ahead, and then they just go suck money out. And that's because they don't have that, I'll call it dual system of processes that we verify both. And so I think that that's something that people need to hear, because that's super important. And if you're working with a system, or you're working within a system that doesn't have that process, and it's just relying upon a one-way transaction, so I'm paying out and good luck on the other end, right? And that's troublesome for the payor and the payee both. So I love that you brought that up. So I know that I've encountered, and I encounter my clients where they come to us, and I feel like we just always seem to get problem children who come to us, and they've got no systems in place whatsoever. And so as a trusted advisor, I'm sitting there looking at what this client's doing. They're a lot of them are a lot of times multi-million dollar companies that are, you know, out there just transacting and not realizing the implications of their decisions, or clients that have multiple entities where we now have, cross patterns of things that are happening, and we've got to keep it straight. And so Veem allows those companies who have multiple entities. We just sent a client over a couple weeks ago who has multiple entities, and it's like you've got to have that separation, so we're not piercing corporate veils, that we're not just having this mosh posh of transfers all over the place, but rather having true transactions that are occurring. And so you must see a lot of that.
Yeah, and there's every side of that spectrum. We've got many businesses very clean, but just as many that are the books are messy, the boundaries are messy. But I think like you said, if you can implement a tool, and if we can kind of clear out the clutter and really kind of help them develop a path that really makes sense, and develop the rails for them,
Right.
to really kind of drive in the right direction, it can be quite easy for them. I mean, we have a number of tools that can help with that, but we work with lots of organizations, and more frequently you're starting to see this a lot with different businesses that have subsidiaries or sister brother organizations that
Right.
all have some similarities and overlap. But tools like Veem, among others, I mean, QBO helps a lot out with this as well. But to keep everything kind of separate and neat and organized and tidy, that these transactions, these are owned by this business, this LLC alone, and we can kind of separate it and cut out the noise of going through these and make it. Ultimately, the other aspect of this is put it in a day-to-day process that can be standardized
Mm.
across one organization or multiple organizations, for not only the internal employees, but as well as any bookkeepers, any outside or outsourced accounting firms, and one that they can operate on a day-to-day basis very seamlessly.
Yeah, and the one other thing that I kind of want to throw in there for the accounting firm themselves. I know that there are a lot of accounting firms who don't want to accept electronic payments because of fees and things like that. With Veem having that ability to, first of all, sync with your QBO file and upload all your customers, you have all your clients all already imported into Veem, and able to send out their invoices through Veem, where they go ahead and they make payment to you and eliminate the ACH and the merchant fees from credit cards or other things like that. Because really, what Veem is doing is capturing the end transaction and then transferring that. Is that am I saying that right? I'm saying it in the Dawn Brolin version.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, absolutely, and that is what we do, and receivables in particular, like you said before, there's always been this kind of chasm, so to speak. Not too many, businesses operate on both sides, but receivables is actually a focus of ours, for this year, and we've got a number of new features on that side, because everyone does payables. There's a million companies that do payables, right? They're easier, but they're not quite as sexy, right? Like no one likes to send money out. There's not quite as much of a focus on
Right.
getting those funds in a way. So you're right. We focus on, again, true process improvement through automation and integrations, and having that information come over your invoice that's in QBO, come over, being able to get automatically sent out or manually sent out based off if you would like, have a client be able to pay that in whatever way they want to pay it, essentially, and then that whole system from the funds and the information data flow back into QBO and your bank afterwards is
Right.
really powerful. There's a lot of other tools we actually just brought out here last week. It'll be getting marketed out, but our first version of pre-authorized debit, so PAD agreements. There's a lot of people that are interested in that for those day-to-day, recurring transactions. If a client, as an example, it's a $500 bill on the first of every month for the next 12 months is your scope of work, why not automate that process?
Right.
Why manually go in and do that for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 clients, whatever the situation might be?
Right.
We can all look in a number of areas in our lives, but that's one where we can get time back. And really the question ends up being, what else could you do with that time every month?
Right. So yeah, and that's something that and I'm always talking about reassessing your success. That's something that we're doing. Is it the potential for us to save on those merchant fees, for instance, that we're looking at to say, okay, so for next tax season, we implement part of our process to, I'll call it for lack of a better explanation, to onboard the client to Veem, to say, hey, listen, this is how you're going to pay us this year. Go ahead, put in your payment information so that when we're ready to process the invoice, it's automated. We don't have, not necessarily automated, but we can, pull the trigger on processing that payment, as opposed to through the avenue we're using now where we're getting charged those fees. So that's something I think is super important for the accounting professional to take a look at, maybe after tax season, as you're doing a reassess your success from the previous, this 2022 season, if you will, and looking back and saying, hey, yeah, I really do need to implement a new system. And I would love to be able to receive payments from clients and have them implemented at the beginning, which is what we do. We do a lot of, here's how we're going to run this tax season, just so everyone knows. We kind of start that process in December and then throughout January to say, hey, we want it to be a smooth process, but this is an opportunity for you as a firm to save some money on those fees, or implement a system that you didn't have before that you just refuse to participate in because of those fees. So that may be
Yeah.
something, Tyler, that they can look forward to as they transition out of this season into the next one.
Yeah, I mean, we always see a kind of an influx, of course, of people having conversations, and at minimum, we want to, just evaluate, just have a look at what's out there, of course, for your firm, but as well for your clients, right? That mentality of that it ain't, broken, don't fix it sort of thing. That's such an old school mentality. There are improvements for working systems today that can be implemented, and you know what, you might even be shocked to say this, Dawn. Look at Veem, look at other, look at Melio, look at Corpay. I mean, there's a bunch of competitors. We all do slightly different things, so you do need to do a bit of an evaluation, because certain tech and tools will work better with certain different technologies and customer set. But spend some time, go through it, because we're here on the side of improvement, and there's still a lot of the folks that are on the banks and checks, right? Like any
Right.
any solution on this side of the fence is an improvement at the end of the day, even if it's not Veem. Would love for it to be Veem, of course, but there's a lot of improvement that can be done. But do the evaluation, take some time for yourself and your clients, and see what's out there.
Absolutely. And that's the whole point of the DM disruption, is to motivate you to take a look at something different. And you're right. It's not always because there's something wrong. It could be that you're doing something that seems to be working and things are flowing well, but could they be better? I'm always striving for perfection. I mean, I think anyone who's an entrepreneur, that's your goal, is for as much perfection as you can obtain. And so here's another opportunity for you to do that. So Tyler, I really appreciate you coming, but are there any last thoughts that you want to leave with people? Where can they go to become a part of the accountant channel at Veem and those kind of things?
Yeah. So if anyone's looking for any more information, right on our website, veem.com, we've got a whole accountants page right along the top banner. You'll see it as soon as you get there. Click on it. There's a lot of information about what we do and whatnot. But, of course, we're always looking to have individual conversations as well. So there's direct links on there to book meetings with members of our team or search out information. So they can always reach us there. But yeah, just spawning off what Don says, just have a look, see what's out there, poke a couple tires at very minimum, have a conversation with a couple different businesses, because you might be surprised as to what advancements have been out there in the last couple of years, and the number of different areas that companies like Veem and others could offer some help in.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely, like I said, just check out Veem. I've really enjoyed it. We've implemented with clients. Tyler is like my go-to. So tyler.hickman@veem.com. Certainly reach out to him personally. That's also fine. But he seems to solve any of the questions that I may have. He's my go-to. But the people at Veem are very supportive. They're there to help. Super responsive when it comes to support, which, as I always state to you guys, is very important to me. If you can't get support, why are you working with that app? You've got to be able to get answers. You got to get them quick. So Veem is providing that support, certainly to Powerful Accounting and to the clients that we've introduced so far to the Veem family, if you will. But I definitely want to thank everyone for listening, and Tyler for being here today. I know we'll have you back on as Veem is again continuing to improve and bring on new features and things like that, which again is super important when you're selecting an app. If they look the same, feel the same, then they are the same, because you can't be, listen, if you're standing still and doing the same thing, you're actually going backwards. Something that a lot of people don't realize. You've got to be moving forward, and these apps have got to be moving forward and growing. And I can tell you Veem is doing that. So thank you, Tyler. Thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time on the DM Disruption.
Thank you so much, Tom.
Later.